hope you guys are doing well. Of course, we cannot begin without a confirmation. So if I could please have it on the chat box as to whether I am audible and visible both. And if both of those two things are taken care of, let us begin with a very heavy duty session today. And when I say heavy duty, I literally mean to say that you will be scrambling your heads for the next 40-45 minutes. And I'd like, if you guys are on your phone, probably shift to maybe a tablet or a computer or anywhere wherein you can have a bigger screen, because you wouldn't want to cram your eyes onto such little miniature wordings that I have. But first things first, of course, I need a confirmation as to whether I am audible and visible both. So if you could please write in the chat box, that will be of great help to me. So I'm just going to go take a peek, come back, and once all has been taken care of, let us begin with the questions that we have for today. Okay, perfect. I think I am audible. Yes. Both of those two things have been taken care of. So let me begin. But before I begin, like I said, I'd like to first help you know what is it that we are going to be doing today. So I know the sessions had been a little erratic, but soon after the class today, or soon after the session today, actually, we're going to make a playlist of all of these sessions that we have. So you have CR in one consolidated place. But having said all of that, what we had initially decided was that we would take 2 question stems each day, understand the strategy behind it, understand the theory behind it, maybe, do a couple of questions live. And then towards the end, we'll do one consolidated practice wherein we will have a mixed bag. So we're going to have a motley of questions. And all of these questions that we are going to be having will be discussed live here in the class. If the YT extends a lot longer than expected, maybe we'll skip a couple of questions here and there if we have done that particular question step. But we'll see. Of course, originally I'd want that we do all of the questions right now. So be ready with all of the reading that you're going to be required to be doing today, because that's going to be an essential. And like I said, a larger screen would of course come in helpful. So let's begin without any further ado, but the ground rules are going to be such. Before we begin, I will move on to the question that I have. I will give you maybe a minute or two to read, and I'd like if you guys could just write your answers in the chat box. There is zero judgment on what answer do you get. We're all here to learn, so we are not going to be bullying anybody. We're not going to be making fun of anybody while we do the answers, but please make sure that you do write the answers, because it's only when you claim do you understand why it's wrong. Trust me when I say this. If you keep it in your head and you think that, okay, I've decided for an answer, oh, but the answer was something else, it wouldn't hurt you so much. It's when you actually put it to structure, whenever there's a tangible aspect that comes out of it, that's where we begin to learn. So it's very important that you write your answers, prompt it in the chat box. And if it is wrong, we'll figure out why it is wrong. But if you keep it in your head, there will be no learning value, because it's very easy in the head to shift from one answer to the other. It's only when you type is when you can't go back. And that's where you actually begin to understand why it is right or why it is wrong. So that's going to be the ground rule. 2-3 minutes of reading time, and post that we will begin. If you have already read and answered, I'd request you to please be patient, because of course we have more people who are in the YT live who would also like to answer. Let's not get into any sort of random chatting today, because all of the chat box answers will be something that I shall be reading out to be knowing what is it that you have or the majority has chosen. So we'd like the chat box to be neat and clean, pretty decent in the visuals of it, so that I know which of the following has been the most popular answer choice. And with that, let us begin. On to the very first question. Read properly, read maybe once or twice or 3 times. You're here to learn. This is not a race. This is not your performance analysis. This is more of knowing what or how the approach is to be. So we're trying to put all of the theory that we've talked into practice, and we're going to be walking the talk, we're going to walk the talk today. So please make sure that you read it once, twice, how many ever number of times that you want, and answer basis a certain conceptual backing. And of course, when we discuss, we're going to discuss all of the options, and we will know why an answer and why not. So without any further ado, let us begin with what we have. On to the first question, everybody. So I'm just going to take a side step. Please read Start punching in the chat box, and then we will begin about 2.5 minutes of reading time. Please start. Okay, so we do have the answers coming in. Well, the answers seem to be racing in for B. Okay, so we have Yatika, and then we have Div, who are asking if this is going to be a concept class or not. Yes, the concept classes have already been taken care of. We've had the previous classes, which are concept classes, and today we're having a application class. So, like I said, after the end of this class, there will be a playlist that will be made so that you have all of the concepts intact. And then there is somebody who's been very curious in knowing that the one on the thumbnail is a different teacher. No, it's like a Ghibli version of me, a more nicer version, but it is me. So don't worry, irrespective, whichever be the teacher in the thumbnail. What is important is what we do in the class. So let us begin with the first one. The incoming answer is B, and we will see what our answers are likely to be. Now it goes by saying that during the early 20th century, American psychology was dominated by behaviorism and psychoanalysis. So we know for a fact that both of these two things become our protagonist. Whenever the question requires us to find what is the central theme, the first rule that comes to play is called the rule of the protagonist. We have to have a mention of the protagonist. The second is the rule of quantum of information. Quantum of information simply says whatever is the most talked about will find place, not the trivial bit of information. Third, it will have to be a more concise and a condensed version of what all of this tends to be speaking about. So we are going to look for the option which will in the most appropriate manner compact all of this information, and we're going to make sure that no information is out of the scope of the mention at all. So now let's begin. However, so there came a contradiction. Some psychologists were uncomfortable with what they viewed as limited perspective being so influential to the field. So then, however, there were some who were not very okay with this idea of, they were uncomfortable with the idea of the terminologies. They objected to the pessimism and determinism, all actions driven by the unconscious of Freud. So they were not okay with whatever it is that Freud propagated. They also dislike the reductionism. So they not only dislike the pessimism and, of course, the determinism, even the reductionism, which was basically a simplifying nature of behaviorism. So here comes the entry of behaviorism as well. Behaviorism is also deterministic, and it's at its core because it sees human behavior as an entirely determined by the combination of genetics and environment. Some psychologists began to form their own ideas that emphasize personal control, internationality, intentionality, and true predisposition for good as important for our self-concept and our behavior. Thus, that is how humanism emerged. So all of this talked about how humanism came to be. We have two scientists or psychologists and their views, and of course the kind of attributes that are required. So whatever should be my answer must take into account these three, four things that we talked about. Now let's begin. The rejection of all psychological theories. Okay, now we know explicits are a big time red flag. We do not take into account any of the explicit words because they make the ideas too extreme. The passage did not get into rejection of all psychological theories that emphasize environmental. No, it was specifically the one that was, of course, pushed or that was being propagated by Freud. So this can't be an answer. We can eliminate A right here. The emergence of humanism, of course, that is what was the bedrock, that is what was the foundational idea. So isko to hame lena hi tha into account. So of course the emergence of humanism is a response to the perceived limitation, of course limitation की ही तो बात हुई है passage में, of both behaviorism and psychoanalysis. ये हम लोग ने starting में ही decide कर लिया था कि ये तो हमारे protagonist होने ही होने हैं. Emphasizing personal agency बोला तो ये last के तीन ideas पे देखो किस तरीके, and a positive view of human nature. Of course it came to be, they talked about the limitation also, which some of them went about, and they talked about the optimism and the personal agency concept, which the others talked about. So both of the aspects of the psychologist has been taken into account, and of course this is how humanism emerged. Perfect answer until now. रख लेते हैं इसको. हमेशा सारे आंसर्स पढ़ा करो, क्योंकि कभी कभी क्या होता है सीआर में, they will give you a better answer, so we need to read all. The dominance of the behaviorism and psychoanalysis, which together provided a complete explanation of human behavior in the early 20th century. Okay, now see what they're doing is either word play कर रहे हैं, इधर words दे रहे हैं आपको. But are the words concocted in the same manner? No, this is a recipe for another passage maybe. Why? Because it says that this is the explanation for human behavior. We didn't talk about the explanation of human behavior. We talked about the emergence of humanism. What entailed humanism and the human behavior is a different topic altogether. So just because you see the, limelights, you see the important words, doesn't make that an answer altogether. And of course, you talked about the fact that there was dominance of both of this, which together, no, there was rejection also to this. So how could we leave one part and then take the other and then just take half of it and turn it into a different idea altogether? Can't be an answer. Not at all. The evolution of psychology from a deterministic view of human behavior is one that fully embraces, okay, another red flag, explicit word, fully embraces unconscious drives as the primary influence. No, this can't be. This barely talks about what the other things are. And this doesn't have anything about humanism. That's something which has, of course, been very important for us. So this can't be an answer at all, which means, yes, the correct answer is going to be option B here. Very good job there, guys. Let's get on to the second one, please. The second is a conclusion question. Please understand, a conclusion is different from the main idea. It's not the same as the central theme. Here, what we have to do is you have to go one step ahead, condense all of this information, and figure out what is that one thing that we can say with absolute guarantee. Let's go, everybody. Please start. Oh, got too excited with it, probably. Can you all see it now? Better? Okay, we do have options coming in. Now let's see. Technology plays a crucial role in social change by transforming our environment and prompting societal adaptation. Okay, so technology does play an important role. We've understood that it does two of these main things: environment ke perspective maybe and societal adaptation maybe. Mechanization and new energy sources have revolutionized economic structures, undermining traditional social organizations and ideologies. All this mechanization, that is मशीन ओरिएंटेशन जितनी भी होती है, इन सब से क्या हो रहा है, एंड न्यू एनर्जी सोर्सेज आ गए, इनसे पूरा रेवोल्यूशनाइज हो गया है, दैट इज थिंग्स हैव चेंज नाउ, दे हैव एडवांस्ड, एंड ऑफ कोर्स अल्टीमेटली व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इज अंडरमाइन दोस ट्रेडिशनल social organizations and उनकी ideologies जो होती है. For instance, now they've given an instance to be able to tell us about this aspect. Industrialization has transitioned women from domestic roles to workforce, creating new social dynamics. Industrialization को देख लो, women भी अब काम करने लगी, घर के कामों को छोड़ दिया उन लोगों ने. Standardization in production fosters efficient distribution and new service oriented professions, altering class structure. Class structures भी break हो रहे, barriers break हो रहे हैं, standardization achieve हो रही है. Innovations like atomic energy and advanced communication further illustrate this impact by enhancing social interaction and complicating political regulation. Innovations be, for example, they've talked about the atomic and they've talked about the advanced communication. All of these also help enhance social interaction. The printing press democratizes knowledge, influencing education, politics, and lifestyle while facilitating cultural diffusion. And then, of course, the printing press and how it helps amalgamate, how it helps dissipate diffusion. So that is exactly what the passage seems to be about. Now, the question says, what conclusion can be drawn from the passage regarding the role of technology in societal development? Of course, whatever be the kind of conclusion, it doesn't have to be a condensed version, it doesn't have to be a gist of this paragraph. It has to be all of this information is equal to. That's how it is, right? So, for example, I do 1 plus 1 plus 1. The conclusion of this is 3, which means I've added this, and this information, which means that there are 3 legs of information here. For example, this is what I have to do. I have to add all of them and ultimately find what is that one thing that I can now say. So, I know that I might get confused, but there'll be a couple of parameters that I have in head. Starting with, it has to be around technology. It has to be about the plus of technology, about the good of technology. The fact that how it is only helping in advancement of the society in this, it's not going reverse. So these elements in itself can be enough for me to know what the answer must be, right? Because if I have to conclude this, that is what I will have to end up with. So let's see what do we have over here. Technology primarily affects political regulation. Okay, now this is negative. Why are we even going into it? This can't be an answer for me. Mechanization and new energy sources have led to the complete elimination of traditional explicit. We stay wary of anything that is explicit. It goes about by saying that these, of course, they have revolutionized. They have not completely eliminated. Second, ये हमारा protagonist नहीं है. ये तो part है बस. This is something that has come in technology. Right? These are bifurcations. So एक element पे आप conclude कैसे कर सकते? तो हो ही नहीं सकता बिल्कुल. Technology is a driving force behind significant social change, reshaping economic, class, and cultural structures. Of course, something that we were just looking for. सारी information को add करके is equal to कर दिया. Can be an answer, potential answer. The role of women, again, देखो यहीं पे role of women भी तो, it's only one of the many things, right? It was in fact being used as an example. It was never the premise. So this can't be an answer for us, which means the correct answer will have to be option C here. Very well. Okay, let's see. Next is an inference question, guys. Please make sure that you read through and let's go. The next one. Okay, so we do have the answers coming in. I'd read a couple of more. Okay, all right. The other ones, please keep solving. We will begin with the reading bit of it. अभी inference है. पहले तो inference question stem समझो क्या होता है. From the said about the unsaid, right? That is जो भी बात होनी चाहिए वो circumstantial होनी चाहिए. It has to come from this. It cannot be an assumption. It cannot be something which has not happened. Incidental होना चाहिए. Incidental का क्या मतलब है? वो incident इधर होना चाहिए. Second, always remember, reshaping the idea, rephrasing the idea is also inference. So of course it is about the unsaid, but a lot of times आप उसी बात को जब वापस से थोड़ा सा rephrase करके दोहराते हो ना, तो वो unsaid बात भी समझ में आ जाती है. So it accounts for an inference. Okay, so please understand all of those things that you can imply that way is also will be an inference. What will not be an inference is direct restatement. वो बिल्कुल भी inference नहीं होगा. अब चलो questions को देखते हैं. Journalism merges writing with news gathering and interpretation, requiring journalists to be both researchers and writers. So journalism of course merge करती है writing को, and they have to not only gather, उनको interpret भी करना होता है, तो ये दोनों काम करते हैं, researcher भी है और writers भी है. Their work varies between newspaper and magazines, but all journalists must locate and investigate stories before reporting them. So of course अभी वो newspaper में काम करे या magazine में, but one thing that all have to do explicitly is कुछ भी नहीं छापना है उनको, सोच समझ के उनको छापना है, इन्वेस्टिगेट करके छापना है. They interpret the nuances within primary news sources and often sift through numerous stories, ultimately selecting only a small percentage for publication. And वो लोग बहुत सारे nuances बारीकी, बहुत सारे nuances को देखते हैं, बहुत सारी information से sift करते हैं, sift छन्नी को बोलते हैं. So literally छानते हैं, that is they literally find out what is the correct information, they weigh all of the pros and the cons of it, and ultimately what comes out is a very small chunk of the publication. While a successful journalist may gather a wealth of information, only about 3 to 5 is typically used. बहुत सारा काम भी हो सकता है, 3 से 5% ही छपता है उसमें. Additionally, they need to anticipate future news based on current events as newspapers seek timely and exclusive coverage. And अक्सर उनको anticipate भी करना होता है भाई कि अब आगे क्या होगा basis their news. So they also have to be probably foretellers of what is going to happen. However, true scoops are rare and false scoops can damage a newspaper's reputation. But all of this is a very careful task that they have to do, because अगर true scoop नहीं देंगे वो लोग, that is, if they don't give a nice scoop of the information, then of course their reputation can be tarnished, it can be harmed. But अगर real दे दिया उन लोगों ने, तो of course it is very rare, but that is going to be commendable. Okay, now what can be inferred about the challenges faced by the journalist in their profession? So इनका challenge क्या है? तो challenge तो यहाँ पे था ना कि इतना सारा पढ़ते हैं, इतना सा निकलता है, एंड फिर उसके बाद उनको उसी में दे हैव टू बी डिटेक्टिव्स, दे हैव टू बी एवरीथिंग इन इट. So it's not an easy job because a lot of accountability comes across. So that is the kind of challenge that they have. इसमें हमने shrink करके समझा, तो इसी का inference निकालना है कि उनका काम में भी there's a lot of things that has to be done. So we'll see which option reads along our requirement. Journalists frequently rely on secondary, अभी secondary source तो हो ही नहीं सकता ना, क्योंकि ऐसी तो कोई बात ही नहीं हुई है, incidental नहीं है, ए हटा दो. Majority of the information gathered by journalists is never published, requiring them to be highly selective of. Okay, now I know there is a never, but it's okay because context देखो ना किस तरीके से यूज करे. Majority of the information gathered by journalists is never. Majority तो कभी publish ही नहीं होती, क्योंकि इतने में से इतना ही तो करते हैं. यही तो हमने बात किया था ना कि उनका प्रॉब्लम क्या है, इतना पढ़ते हैं इतना सा निकलता है एक आर्टिकल भर का. So of course it is never, because they're highly selective and they have to be very selective. See, this word selective talks about both of the emotion, the prestige also and the deformation also. So this can definitely be an inference क्योंकि इसने सबको एक बार में ले लिया, रख लो. Anticipating future news is more important than verifying the accuracy. Nowhere do we talk about what is more important. It's a task and tasks are just adumbrated. कुछ लिखा नहीं है उसमें priority में क्या है. Can't be. Newspapers typically publish all of the, ये तो गलत है, ऐसा तो कभी पैसेज ने बोला ही नहीं, तो गलत बात को क्यों लेना है, which means the correct answer will have to be option B over there. Let's see the next. Okay, now the next is an assumption. All right, let's get to the next one. I think this is a lot like the one that we did in the first one, but I think that's a good go. Let's start. Okay, so we do have incoming answers. We'll wait for more. Maybe it's just one. Okay. All right. Let's see now. Psychoanalysis is a therapeutic approach that explores the interplay between the unconscious and the conscious aspect of psychological experience, employing techniques such as free association and dream interpretation. So, they've talked about how psychoanalysis works, what sort of a merger does it does, and of course, the kind of equipments it tends to use, being the techniques which are free association and interpretation. Emerging from Simon Freud's classical theories in late 19th century Vienna, contemporary psychoanalysis is diversified into various schools of thought, including object relation, Jungian analysis, and Lacanian psychoanalysis. So it has also spread, right? It has its tentacles and it has also spread to the other aspects. These different models often engage in debates, yet they share a fundamental emphasis on transference and counter-transference dynamics between the analyst and the analysand, which are seen as crucial for psychological healing. Now, of course, these all have different models to be engaging with, but there is a fundamental emphasis. Something that is of commonality is the transference and the counter-transference. That's the kind of relationship that they have, the analyst has and the analysand. That is the person upon whom it is being done, which is a very crucial thing. As a result, psychoanalysis continues to be a vital framework for understanding and addressing a wide range of mental issues, evolving to incorporate modern insights while retaining its core principles. And that's why this has become very important. So, one commonality, while different ways of approaching it, but of course, this is one commonality, and that is what keeps that is what has been the most important aspect to address mental health issues. The passage suggests that contemporary psychoanalysis diversified into various schools of thought while still maintaining its relevance in addressing mental health issues. Of course, as been stated in the passage. Which of the following assumption is necessary for this claim to hold? Now, what is an assumption? An assumption will have to be the one thing that the author takes for granted. So, what is the one thing that he has understood and he has taken for granted, and that he said all of this? So, in simpler words, author ने पेन क्यों उठाई? क्या बोलना चाह रहा है हमको? कुछ तो सोचा होगा ना जो बंदे ने ये सारी चीजें लिख दी. It has to be the missing link between the premise and the conclusion. Classic definition. So कौन सी इंफॉर्मेशन है जो उसने सोची होगी, जो उसके हिसाब से सही होगी कि उसने ये सारी बातें की, राइट? सो उसने क्या सोच के ये बोला है कि psychoanalysis diversified into various schools of thought while still maintaining the relevance in addressing mental issues. So what is that one thing उसने जो सोची होगी? Let's start. The diversity of psychoanalytic school does not call for deviation from the core principles transference and countertransference. That is, कितना भी diversity ला दो, core principle same रहता है. इसीलिए आप जितना भी करोगे while maintaining relevancy तो fundamental principle की रहेगी ही रहेगी. बिल्कुल, ये तो हो सकता है, ये बात तो बिल्कुल सोची होगी उसने जो ये बोला है. रख लेते हैं. All forms of psychoanalysis must incorporate modern techniques beyond those originally proposed. तो गलत बात हो गई. हम तो original first proposal पे चल रहे हैं. तो ये नहीं हो सकता. The therapeutic outcomes of psychoanalysis are superior to those achieved by other modern okay, no, we didn't talk about that. Out of scope, that is not what the assumption हमको बोलता है कि बहुत सारे branches हो गए हैं psychoanalysis के, फिर भी उसका main principle क्यों intact है? क्योंकि उसका main principle सब पे diffuse हो सकता है ना, यही तो बात होगी. The emphasis on transference and counter-transference is unique to psychoanalysis and not shared by any other. No, then it defeats the purpose here. So, of course, the answer here will have to be option A. So, that's pretty cool that all of you guys have been getting the right answers. Let's bounce on to the next. Okay. So, guys, I'm just going to skip this. Maybe you can come back. I will have this PPT uploaded right after the YT because I don't think we'll have enough time. So, we'll do one each, one question type of each. Now, this is again conclusion. So, I'd like to skip this because we did a conclusion. The next is again a primary theme. Since we have done it, we're just going to move ahead. Okay, we're now going to get on to strengthen the question type. Now, you all know what strengthening is. So, let's just begin with that. Let's go, everybody. The next one, which is a strengthening of the argument. Okay, all right, let's see. Now, recent studies suggest that frequent interactions with AI chatbots may influence human social behavior, leading to decreased empathy and altered communication patterns in real life interaction. So, the more you talk to your chat GPT, no, that's actually a disclaimer, don't do that then. So, the more you talk to your AI chatbots, what's going to happen is there'll be decreased empathy, compassion हमारे अंदर कम हो जाएगा, and ultimately, of course, हमारे real life interactions भी उसी तरीके से it will just keep, getting into that pattern. This raises concern about the long-term psychological effect of AI on human relationship and skill. Of course, because of this, it raises concern. Raises concern मतलब कुछ गड़बड़ होने वाली है. ठीक है. अभी strengthen करना है ना argument को. Strengthen करना है तो obviously author का argument क्या है? AI को लेके skeptical हो रहा है. बोल रहा है कि इससे हो सकता है कि हमारे long term relationships थोड़े से गड़बड़ हो सकते. So strengthen is a plus one. Author के नारे में नारा लगाना है ना हमको. So author ने बोला है कि गड़बड़ है तो हम बोले कि भाई गड़बड़ तो है. अब देखते हैं कौन सा ऑप्शन बता रहा है. And of course a good reason. So you can't just claim, you have to also justify. So there has to be an explanation as to why it's happening. Now, users who often chat with AI chatbots show better online communication skills than those who do not. Of course, that can't be, because it's talking about how AI is good, then in a way, right? That's not what we want. People spending more time with AI have been found to show less empathy in face-to-face meetings. Obviously, interpersonal meeting में कम हो रहा है, so definitely makes for an answer. AI chatbots are being designed to imitate human emotions and empathetic. तो ये प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं होनी थी. कैंसिल थोड़ी करना है हमको, वीकन थोड़ी करना है, तो ये नहीं हो सकता. Most people use AI chatbots mainly for tasks like getting information or help. So what? Empathy can also be slipped in there also. It's not about what you're using. ये थोड़ी कि मैं तो empathy की बातें ही नहीं कर रहा हूँ. वो तो कॉन्टेक्स्ट ही नहीं था ना, हम तो उनकी बात कर रहे हैं जो कर रहे हैं. तो आप तो मेरे कॉन्टेक्स्ट से बाहर हो, आप तो मेरे स्कोप में ही नहीं हो. So you can't be the one whom I want to talk about. So of course the answer will have to be option B here. Very good job there. Okay. Next. Next is an evaluate the argument. Let's see. What is that one piece of information that we will need so that we can tell whether this argument that we have is strong or that it can be contested. Let's go. Next one, please. Okay. All right then. Let's see what do we have. With the increasing use of AI in newsrooms, concerns are growing that reliance on algorithm may undermine journalistic integrity. तो journalist की जो integrity है वो undermine हो जाएगी ज़्यादा use करने से. Critics argue that AI generated articles lack the investigative depth and ethical judgment of human journalists, potentially leading to a decline in the quality of the news reporting. Quality खराब हो जाएगी क्योंकि उनके अंदर empathy नहीं है ना, अभी तो पहले पढ़ा था हम लोगों ने. Supporters claim that AI can enhance efficiency and free up journalists for more critical tasks. But supporters, जो obviously we had the ones who were dissidents to it, now we have the proponents to it. So of course the proponents go about by saying, but ठीक तो है यार, वो लोग AI अपना काम कर देगी, तो obviously journalists free होंगे, ज़्यादा important काम कर लेंगे. Which of the following would be the most useful to evaluate the argument? Evaluate करने के लिए हम क्या करते हैं? We look for that one option, which if true will strengthen the argument, and if false will of course crumble the argument. So what is that one thing? या extra ऐसा देखो. What is that one extra piece of information जो अगर मेरे पास होती तो मैं इसकी validity को बता पाती कि हाँ यार ये इतना strong है कि नहीं. Let's see. Whether AI generated articles can be produced faster than those written by human journalists. Now this goes to say that अगर मेरे पास ये information आ जाएगी कि articles जो है AI generated articles they produce fast. No, it's not about the writing, it's about the content here. ये तो scope के ही बाहर हो गया. Whether readers can distinguish between AI generated news articles and those written by humans. Now over here we talked about the fact that what is missing is not what is being written, it's about the qualitative aspect of it, not the quantitative aspect of it. Right? तो ये भी थोड़ा सा ना scope के बाहर रखना है तो रख लो, देख लेते हैं. Whether AI algorithm can be programmed to uphold journalistic ethics or standards. अगर algorithm ही change ऐसा कर दे कि uphold कर दे वो ethics को or not, तो अगर इसको strengthen करेंगे तो हमारा argument strengthen हो जाएगा, इसको weaken करेंगे तो ये argument निकल गया ना. Because here we have talked about the pros and the cons of AI algorithm upon journalistic, what is that, integrity. तो obviously ये ethics पे चला जाएगा ना. बिल्कुल, तो between B and C तो C better हो गया, इसको हटा देते हैं हम. Whether news organization, okay, it's not about the news organizations using the AI decline in readership, it's more about whether the AIs can be trained within the ethical compass or not. So इसको strengthen करेंगे तो argument strengthen हो जाएगा, इसको weaken करेंगे तो हमारा argument खत्म हो जाएगा. तो obviously our answer becomes option C here. Very good job. Pretty impressed there. Okay, the next is a flaw. Now let's find out what we have in the flaw. Let's go please. The ninth one. Okay, so Manjeet wants a clarity as to what needs to be done in flaw. So basically, in the flaw questions, what happens is that there is some information which is paradoxical. That is, there is premise and then there is conclusion, but the premise is not really equal to the conclusion. There's going to be कुछ गड़बड़ होगी यहाँ पे. That is, premise में कोई एक चीज है जो probably उन लोगों ने construe नहीं किया या उन्होंने consider नहीं किया जिसकी वजह से conclusion possible नहीं है. So flaw basically tells us that contradiction. What is that one thing जो हो ही नहीं सकती, ये कंक्लूजन नहीं आ सकता क्योंकि उन्होंने एक चीज मिस कर दी है. तो दैट गैप इन द आर्गुमेंट इज व्हाट इज अ फ्लॉ. तो आपको बताना है कि इसमें गड़बड़ क्या है. ओके, सो लेट्स सी व्हाट डू वी हैव. Supreme Court ruled that universities cannot consider race in their admissions processes, stating that such practice violates the equal protection clause of the Constitution. Universities नहीं कर सकती है. अभी proponents are people who are towards it. Proponents बोलते हैं कि ruling that admission should be solely merit based to ensure fairness and equality for all applicants. The fact that the proponents say, of course, admission merit पे होना चाहिए, merit पूरा होना चाहिए. Opponents contend करते हैं कि this approach ignores the systematic inequalities and undermines the effort to promote diversity and inclusion. But जो opponents है वो कहते हैं कि नहीं, इससे diversity नहीं आएगी, इससे कुछ नहीं, इससे क्या नहीं आएगा, हमारा systemic inequalities होगी तो हम लोग इसलिए उसको नहीं ला सकते. So there is a conclusion that we have that race should not be a criteria, to which we have the proponents and the opponents. Okay, now which of the following identifies a flaw in the proponent's argument? सिर्फ proponent का, तो proponent ने क्या कहा था, उनको दो क्योंकि वो solely merit पे होने चाहिए. तो आप 100% सिर्फ मेरिट पे दे रहे हो तो क्या गड़बड़ हो सकती है इसमें. तो सबका मेरिट चेंज हो सकता है ना, किस बेसिस पे, सबको अपॉर्चुनिटीज उतनी नहीं मिली है. तो वो लोग क्या बोल रहे हैं, वो लोग कह रहे नहीं सबको मेरिट पे करो, बट उसमें फ्लॉ है क्योंकि somebody who comes from the rich class, the elite class, and somebody who comes from the poor class might not have the same merit because of the extra socio-economic conditions. That could be a possible flaw. तो ये ऐसे ही ढूंढना होता है हमको. Let's see. They assume that all applicants have equal opportunities to achieve the merit considered the, इसने ले लिया ना सोशो इकोनॉमिक सोशो कल्चरल बैकग्राउंड, बिल्कुल ये फ्लॉ हो सकता है, रख लो. They believe that diversity in universities does not enhance the educational experience for all. No, they did not talk about diversity. वो तो हमारा opponents का तो ये नहीं हो सकता. They overlook the possibility that some students might misrepresent their qualification. तो some हुए ना, उन some को हटा दो, बाकी तो बचे. तो बाकी तो इसमें आ सकते हैं ना. तो इसीलिए ऑप्शन नहीं हो सकता. This is a weak option. They assert that equal protection clause prohibits any consideration of individual differences in admission. Now, they've not asserted anything. They're just proposing it because they think that it should be merit based. So what is the flaw in merit? The fact that not everybody can have, because हमें अगर flaw निकालना है तो उन्हीं के argument में निकालना है. तो उनके argument में of course ऐसा assertion का अभी clause है तो factual हो गया ना, उसमें तो हम लोग कुछ नहीं बोल सकते. So D can't be an answer, but A can be an answer. Why? Because A says that they said that should be only merit. I say okay, I agree with the merit part. But that is only possible when everybody has the same status quo. अगर सबका status quo अलग है तो merit पे आप नहीं कर सकते हो. So clearly the answer will have to be option A here. Let's see the next. Okay, the next is a weaken the question type. Let's begin. I guess there are just two more question stems that remain. एक अपना weaken हो जाएगा, एक अपना bold face हो जाएगा, and then we can call it a day. Next one, please go. Okay, let's see what do we have over here. Now we have to weaken. Weaken दो तरीके से होता है, technique of reversal, technique of negation. ठीक है, अभी देखते हैं. Recent reports indicate that implementing a global carbon tax could significantly reduce the greenhouse emission, but critics argue it may harm economic growth, especially in developing nations. उन्होंने कहा देखो ये सब बहुत अच्छा तो है, but of course what is going to happen is economic growth रुक जाएगी. Supporters claim that the long-term environmental benefits will outweigh the short. अभी economic drawbacks हो रहे हैं, but जो long-term benefits होंगे वो उसको outweigh कर देगा. That is, benefits will be more. Which of the following would weaken the critiques argument above? So of course हमें किसको करना है? हमें critique के argument को करना है, right? So now when I go and say that the critics argue that may harm economic growth, especially in developing nations में ये होगा. तो obviously अगर हमें इसको weaken करना है तो technique of reversal या negation, of course. Then what we have to simply go about by doing is that if they say that it may harm the economic growth, especially in developing nations, and then we have of course, so no, then we are going to say that no, it might not really harm. आपने शायद आप थोड़े short sighted हो गए. Let's see. Several developed nations have implemented carbon taxes without significant harm. Okay, now this cannot be an answer because this takes into account the developed nations. Here they had a problem with the developing. Developed के पास तो सब है ना. तो ये तो मेरा स्कीम ही नहीं हो सकता. These can't be the ones that I can take into account. So this can't be. Renewable energy technologies are becoming cheaper and would reduce emission without the need for a carbon tax. Now this says that the renewable energy technology that is there, it's becoming cheaper. वो और सस्ती हो गई है and could reduce emission without the need. And वो reduce कर देगी emission. कोई भी carbon tax की जरूरत, carbon tax तो चाहिए ही ना, क्योंकि आप in any which way आप premise factual information को थोड़ी change कर सकते हो. You can reverse the opinion, not the fact. This is a fact. This can't be an answer. I suppose people did have B as the answer. This cannot be. अब बचा यही तो देखते हैं. Developing countries rely heavily on high emission industries and cannot easily shift again. Now this says that they tend to rely on high emission industries and they cannot easily shift to greener alternatives. वो नहीं कर सकते. Okay, तो ये तो strengthen ही कर देगा एक तरीके से. And the last, the projected reduction in emission from a global carbon tax is less than previously estimated. That is, वो बोल रहे हैं कि हमारा उन लोग का पैसा बहुत harm हो जाएगा. But when I go to say कि जो projected reduction हो रहा है emission का from the global carbon tax, that is less than what is previously estimated. So whatever इन लोगों ने जो भी estimate किया होगा, but पैसा actually में कम लग रहा है जो आपने सोचा उससे ज्यादा कम लग रहा है, तो economic growth harm कैसे होगी? तो पैसे कम लगे ना, which means it's going to be a win-win for them. Out of the lot, the answer will be D. Unfortunately, for the very first time, nobody really had D. C tak chalega, but of course D didn't happen. I hope that one was clear. And let's do this last question for today's YT, which is a bold-faced statement. Let's go, guys. Give it all you got. Let's end with high power answering. Let's go. The 11th one. Do we have the answer? Okay, let's see now. Now the passage. Scientists at the National Ignition Facility have achieved a net energy gain in the controlled fusion reaction for the first time, sparking hopes for an era of clean and limitless energy. Okay. So National Integration Facility में उन लोगों ने breakthrough कर लिया है. Fusion reaction से पहली बार कुछ energy gain हो रहा है, net energy gain. Maybe we are embarking on a clean new era of cleanliness and limitless energy. Critics caution, अभी critics आ गए, वो लोग बोलते हैं कि despite this milestone, practical fusion power plants remain decades away due to technical and economic. आपने कर तो लिया, but ये अभी implementation में बहुत दूर है. However, अभी however आ गया मतलब ये दोनों contradictory है ना. So proponents argue that this breakthrough represents a crucial step towards overcoming those obstacles and accelerating the development. But then they're like, no, this is a very crucial step. We will of course eventually overcome those obstacles and accelerate हो जाएगा हमारा डेवलपमेंट ऑफ फ्यूजन एनर्जी. एक बोलता है नहीं है बहुत टाइम लगेगा, दूसरा बोलता है इससे ऑब्स्टिकल्स को ओवरकम कर लेंगे. ओके, नाउ द टू बोल्ड फेस स्टेटमेंट्स प्ले विच रोल इन द फॉलोइंग. जो भी होना है आंसर कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन में ही होना है क्योंकि हाउएवर को जस्टिफाई करना है हमको. लेट्स सी. द फर्स्ट इज एन ऑब्जेक्शन टू द अचीवमेंट एंड द सेकंड इज अ कंक्लूजन दैट इज बेस्ड. नो, दिस इज नॉट अ कंक्लूजन. दिस इज आल्सो एन ऑब्जेक्शन टू द ओपोनेंट्स, राइट? So this can't be. A can't be an answer. Did we have anybody with A? Not really. The first represents a criticism to the development. Okay. The second provides additional support to. It's not a support to the criticism. It's against the criticism. This can't be. The first acknowledges a potential limitation, of course, criticism. And the second offers a reason to dismiss. Dismiss. क्योंकि contradiction है बिल्कुल. This can be an answer. The first states an opposing viewpoint. Okay, makes sense. And the second elaborates on the initial investment. No, they're not elaborating on the investment. In fact, that's an answer to the critique. So this cannot be an answer, which means yes, the correct answer will be option C. Okay, the next is a strengthen. The last is a resolve of the paradox. I think maybe we can do this also because there has been no resolve that we have done until now. Let's very quickly try and resolve this paradox and see what do we have. Let's do this one maybe simultaneously. Let's do this one simultaneously and see. Despite India's strong economic growth, with its GDP rising steadily in recent years, unemployment rates have also remained persistently high. So paradox तो यही मिल गया, क्योंकि भाई अगर इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ हो रहा है तो एम्प्लॉयमेंट भी तो बढ़ना चाहिए ना, बट पैसेज में क्या हो रहा है, एम्प्लॉयमेंट घट रहा है. This creates a paradox where the nation is becoming wealthier, yet individuals are still unable to find suitable employment. Economists are puzzled by the coexistence of the robust economic expansion and significant joblessness. मिल गया हमें paradox. अब हमें रिजॉल्व करना है. रिजॉल्व करने का क्या मतलब है? यू पुट अ सिचुएशन वेर इन इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ भी हो रहा है और अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट भी बढ़ रहा है. क्या हो रहा है ऐसा? चलो लेट्स सी. India's economic growth is primarily driven by capital intensive industries that create. Okay, makes sense. भाई इंडस्ट्रीज से हो रहा है जो मशीन्स पे चलती है. मशीन्स पे चल रही इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ हो रहा है और अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट भी बढ़ रहा है क्योंकि उनको लोग नहीं चाहिए. रिजॉल्व अ पैराडॉक्स, राइट? रख लेते हैं इसको. The agriculture sector in India has experienced a boom. Employing more, employ तो करना ही नहीं, हमें तो unemployment देनी है. Literacy rate has improved, resulting in more people seeking employment opportunities. Literacy से economic growth कहाँ बढ़ रही है? इकोनॉमिक सेक्टर से तो हो रहा है, लिटरेसी से क्या हो रहा है? बोलो तो नौकरी कर रहे हैं वो लोग, तब तो समझ में आएगा. पढ़ लिख के घर पे बैठे हैं तो can't be the answer. Foreign investment have increased in India's technology sector, leading to higher GDP. What is the relationship with education? There is none. Unemployment, sorry, there is none. So then, of course, this goes to say that our answer over here will have to be option A. And with that, we come to an end. So this was my attempt to help simplify critical reasoning. I keep hearing a lot of students have problems or they're afraid of critical reasoning altogether. That's not how it needs to be. It's always, remember guys, it's what you think. Context अगर समझोगे नहीं तभी critical reasoning गलत होगी. So the best thing you should do is, which I always do, is translation. Translate the statements, break it down into smaller, easier sentences, explain it to yourself, and then see. The answer is always ready with you. You just have to have the right context and the right clarity to pick the answer. Like I said, after the end of this, all of the series will be compiled into a playlist. Please make sure you see all of them. And I hope that attempt of mine will help you with critical reasoning and all the turbulence that comes along with it. Thank you for staying put for an hour. I'll see you guys very soon with another strategy or an academic video. All the very best for critical reasoning and make me proud this time. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.